day. Welcome to SO 208. Strike action. Introduction. Unresolved trade disputes often leads to the breakdown of cordial relationship between labor and management, which subsequently ends up with the declaration of strike. Strikes can be declared by either labor or management. In this study session, we will examine the forms and effects of strikes on parties involved in a dispute. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Define and use correctly the following term in bold: strike. 2. Discuss at least 2 types of strikes. The meaning of strike. The occurrence of a strike depends on several factors, which include prevailing circumstances and other issues which might have been seen to be inconsequential. Most strikes are deliberate, organized by workers and not spontaneous. Ehler, 1969, stated that in moving towards a strike, inhibitions must be relaxed, and this is accomplished by accepting or creating interpretations of the situations which encourage action, supplying justifications for striking and minimizing the hazards of the undertaking. Justifications are provided by rehearsing grievances and claiming merits. Thus, the extent to which strikes do actually occur will be most immediately determined by processes of negotiation among workers themselves. The above quotation does not imply that all strikes come about only through workers' deliberate decisions. Management too play roles in the existence and duration of strike. Having been accepted by both parties, management and workers, that a dispute is established, it is required that the aggrieved party gives a 21-day notice. When a dispute becomes a strike, workers have to abandon their jobs or employers lock them out. Therefore, a strike is a temporary stoppage of work in the pursuance of a grievance or demand. Otobo, 2005. A measure of strikes are non-violent because of restraint on both sides and because of both parties realize that it is a temporary stoppage of work. Any damage done to machinery, if violent, will eventually hurt workers when the strike is over. No instrument to work with which will eventually lead to retrenchment. The state occasionally intervenes in strikes through the Ministry of Employment, Labor and Productivity. The ministry intervenes through labor legislation by giving the power to the ministry to intervene in the dispute or apprehend such dispute with the aim of promoting settlement by reconciliation. Forms of strike. The following are some common forms of strikes. A. Wildcard strikes. This is embarking on strike without prior notice to the employer. It is a violation of contractual agreement and is not seriously authorized by the union secretariat. B. Sit-down strikes. Workers are present at work but refuse to work. In sit-down strikes, workers do not take over the company's assets and its management. C. Sympathy strikes. A solidarity action embarked upon by workers who are not directly involved in the dispute. It is moral and fraternal support given by non-involved workers with the aim of bringing pressure on the employer involved in the trade dispute. D. Constitutional strikes. These are strikes that confirm with the laid down procedure of collective agreement in the declaration of strike. The procedure includes way of calling members out, time of calling, etc. E. Official strikes. Strikes authorized by the leadership of the union. An unofficial strike can occur when there is a loss of confidence by membership on their leaders. Measurement of strikes. Incidence of strikes among industries and nations differs. In determining the incidence, the measurement has to be made thus. Michael Poole, 1986 suggests the measurement of strike with 1. Duration, average length of stoppages in working days. 2. Breadth, involvement per 1,000 wage over salary earners. 3. Frequency, number of stoppages per 100,000 wage over salary earners. 4. Impact, number of working days lost per 1,000 wage and salary earners. Duration is the length of the stoppages, usually in man days of work lost. Breadth is the number of workers who participate in work stoppages. Frequency is the number of work stoppages in a given unit of analysis over a specified time period. Impact is the number of working days lost through stoppages. Mobilizing for strike. The actual occurrence of a strike depends on several factors and prevailing circumstances. There is need to mobilize workers for a strike and the latter stage of trade dispute. At this point in time, individual members of management hold discussions with individual workers perceived to be influential and often offer bribes and other inducements in order to abort the fast approaching strike. Such informal pressure tactics are supplemented by official notices that exaggerate the possible negative consequences while appealing to some other categories of workers not to get involved as they are not directly affected. On the worker side, series of meetings will be held to discuss the dispute and the possibility of strike action. At these meetings, 4 types of workers are most active. The group of workers who are most directly affected by original instruction or problem. Those workers that do not usually like going on strike. Influential workers who may argue for or against, and trade union officials. At all informal meetings, all these persons would have been persuasively arguing their various viewpoints before individual and small groups of workers. These various arguments are again repeated at official or formal meetings, with the most appealing of the arguments carrying the day. Sometimes a vote is necessary to determine whether most of the workers present supported one view or the other. When the union sees that negotiation is not getting it what it wants, it soon gives the employer and management a deadline after which it will call out its members on strike. The management, knowing the implications of a strike, may now make further concession in order to stall the strike or call the bluff. A strike is simply a method of bargaining as described in the general opinion in union circles. Many will dispute this opinion, saying instead that when a strike takes place, it is a sign that collective bargaining has failed. Whether a strike represents an extension of collective bargaining or its failure, the decision to walk out or take a strike may be reached by either a union or management in order to secure the terms and conditions of employment each side desires. But this decision is inevitably preceded by an attempt by each party to satisfy itself that a strike will not represent final disaster rather than final persuasion. October 2005. Unions' consideration before embarking on strike action. Do not threaten a strike unless you are ready for it, is a general rule which a union leader forgets at his peril. Indeed, only a very few occasions, particularly those complicated by factors outside the industry and the company, will a bluff work. To reach the decision to strike, most union leaders and bureaucrats are likely to examine the following points. 1. The effect that calling a strike, or conversely agreeing on a contract without a strike, will have on the union's policies, aims and goal. 2. The strength of the union and its ability to shut down the company's operations. This includes whether all or most of the members of the union can be persuaded to stay off the job, whether non-members can be encouraged to do the same, and whether other unions will cooperate with the striking union. 3. The degree to which striking members will be able to withstand the loss of salaries. 4. The degree to which public opinion will be sympathetic or at least not antagonistic to the purposes of the strike. Management consideration before embarking on strike. The considerations include: 1. The extent to which a possible settlement is reconcilable with company policy. 2. What are the long and short-term implications of settling without a strike? Will a comparatively low-cost concession made this year become prohibitively expensive in later years? 3. The ability of the company to withstand possible loss of profits, customers and suppliers depends upon its competitive position and the overall condition of the market and the economy. 4. The ability of the company to secure other employees and continue operations. 5. The effect of a strike on non-striking employees. 6. The importance of the strike issues to union members. Will these issues receive the wholehearted backing of the members? To what extent will the strikers be financially able to go out and remain on strike? 7. The extent to which public opinion will support the company's position. 8. The role that government can be expected to assume in the event of a work stoppage. Effect of strike. A majority of strikes are non-violent because of restraint on both sides. A reason for such caution is the realization that a strike is a temporary stoppage of work. Damage to machinery could hurt workers when the strike is over. Similarly, a high level of aggression during a strike may have negative effect on bargaining relationships, which are crucial for day-to-day labor management relations. There have been cases where workers after a strike refuse to have dealings with particular managers because of their conduct during a previous strike. Thus, although tempers may be high on both sides during a strike action, both sides will seem to recognize certain unwritten rules that govern conduct in such periods. However, some strikes have been violent, largely involving in destruction of some equipment, locking up of some members of management, and forcible closure of factories. Such violence were equally marked by police brutality, as they were empowered to directly intervene to protect public order or the rights of non-striking employees who might be harassed or attacked as they try to cross the pickets. The duration of a strike will depend on such factors as the substance of the disagreement or dispute, the nature of conflict resolution machinery, the resolve of and resources available to both parties, the product over service market or industry, and involvement of the state. The state intervenes in strikes mostly through the operations of the Ministry of Employment or Labor, which ordinarily is responsible for implementing labor laws and related legislation. Effects of strike on the worker and his union. A. It allows the individual striker to exercise his fundamental right to withdraw his service whenever his personal wish and aspiration needs are threatened. B. It improves the economic well-being of members of the trade union whenever it is used to strike a better bargain with management. C. It makes management to take unions serious whenever there is need for future negotiations. D. It is a learning process which by each side, labor and management, is able to estimate the relative power of the other. A unit having had a strike in its previous negotiation was less likely to have a strike in its current negotiation, suggesting that the strike serves as learning process. Morrow, 1982. E. Strikers are at the risk of losing substantial income and tenure during the period of the strike. The implementation of Trade Dispute Decree 1976, Section 32, that no work, no pay, makes strikers to lose pay during strike. F. A loss of credibility of any strike by the strikers confers on the leader loss of confidence from both the management and the workers. They are not likely to be voted in again, and management can victimize such leaders. Fajano, 2006. Effect of strike on the employer and labor management relations. A. There is loss of production, loss of output, inability to meet customers' demands, inability to supply custom orders or schedule, etc. on the part of employer. B. Pre-strike costs. Costs during the strike, long-term costs, and uncommon costs are identifiable by Imberman, 1979. C. Pre-strike costs involve productivity loss. As union leaders and the management trade charges, workers put forth less effort and less care. D. Costs during the strike involve lost profits from loss of revenue, net earnings, and roll equipment. Also, cost is the executive's time, which are used for breaking strike rather than using it for more profits elsewhere. E. Long-term cost includes loss of employees who may not return after the strike, cost of recruitment for replacement of lost staff. Management bears the cost of extra overtime in order to meet up with the loss of production occasioned by the strike action. F. Uncommon costs include sabotage to equipment, prevention of supply of essential services to the factory during picketing. In brief, the final costs, including overheads to the employers by Imberman, 1979, are: A. Legal counsel and executive time during the pre-strike period. B. Pre-strike slump in productivity. C. Loss of operating profits as customers split their orders to avoid disappointment from a factory where strike is imminent. D. Loss of profits during strike. E. Legal counsel and executive time loss during in-strike negotiations. F. Shutdown and disruption. G. Carrying raw materials and semi-finished inventory. H. Carrying hospital, medical, and life insurance during strike action. I. Continuous payment of non-exempt office staff. J. Extra security guards. K. Hiring and training replacements. L. Overtime cost. M. Unrealized profits on lost future sales as customers switch. N. Executive time devoted to production. O. Carrying semi-finished inventory in other disrupted plants, etc. P. Overtime in other plants. Q. Excess distribution costs. And R. Lease of trucks, etc. Effects of strike on the state and society. A. Disruption of the objective or maximization of economic growth and development for the nation. B. Loss of national output as a result of the loss of output in the affected industry. C. In a linkage economy, like in the oil exploration economy, a lot of problems erupt as a result of strike. For example, disruption of electricity grounds, all social services, health services, etc. D. Political unrest can be ignited by a general strike. E. Distortion of the national economy. For example, a successful strike for wage increase leads to infection, readjustment of government priorities, neglect of some social services for the new role, etc. F. Frequent strike brings a nation to disrepute and a fall in its international credibility. Foreign investment are discouraged and a blockage to developmental objectives. Study session summary. In this study session, we discussed the meaning of strike in industrial relations. We discussed types of strike such as wildcast, sit down, sympathy, constitutional and official strikes. Also, we examined different considerations that both workers and management must make before embarking on strike. We concluded with the effect of strike on workers and management. End of study session 8. Thank you for listening.